Hi, this is Goel back again with another video of Java tutorial. In this video, we will discuss topics like data types, operators, and conditions. So if you have not watched my previous video, then please go and watch that video first if you are not aware that how can we install and set up Java. If you are already aware that how you can set up Java, IntelliJ and get on the system, then just go ahead with this tutorial. Data types, the name justifies itself that data types are the entities in Java in which we store some data. So every data has some type which we call data type. So as I discussed in my previous video that Java is a strongly typed language means we have to tell compiler the type of data at the time of initializing the variable. For example, if we want to initialize integer type of data, that is a number, then in Java we can simply type int space variable equals to value, like the example below. Okay, so here we can see that there are two types of data types. These are primitive data types and non-primitive data types. Primitive data types are those for which we do not need to create an object. So what is an object? We will discuss that in later videos because now is not the right time to discuss the object. And non-primitive data types are those type of data types for which we need to create an object. So just for your info, an object can be created using the new keyword. Okay, so now let's have a look at what are primitive data types. So there are 8 primitive data types, the one I have listed here. First is Boolean. Boolean data type has only two possible values, true and false. Use this data type for simple flag that try true false conditions. This data type represents one bit of information, but its size isn't something that's precisely defined. Next is character. Character can store an alphabet in it. It can store data in it of 2 bytes. Then byte. The byte data type can store up to 1 byte of information. It has minimum value of -128 and maximum value of 127. The byte data type can be useful for saving memory in large arrays where the memory saving actually matters. So this can be used also in the place of int. Next is short. Short data type can store 2 bytes of information in it. It has a minimum value of -32,768 and a maximum value of 32,767. As with byte, the same guidelines apply. You can use short to save memory in large arrays in situations where the memory saving actually matters. Next is int. It can store 4 bytes of information in it. So this is the most commonly used data type when it comes to storing numbers. It has a minimum value of -2 raised to the power 31 and a maximum value of 2 raised to the power 31 minus 1. Next is long. The long data type is similar as int data types. It just can store more information than int can. So it can store information up to 8 bytes. So it has a minimum value of -2 raised to the power 63 and a maximum value of 2 raised to the power 63 minus 1. Float and double are same as int and long. The difference is that int and long cannot store decimal values, but float and double can store decimal values. So next is non-primitive data types. Non-primitive data types are those which we initialize using the new keyword or for which we create an object. So there are few examples of non-primitive data types like strings and arrays and all the objects of classes. And now our next topic, that is operators. There are basically 5 types of operators in Java. Those are, the first one is assignment operator. So assignment operator is equals to sign. It is used to initialize any variable or assign a value in a variable. The next is arithmetic operators. These operators are used to perform mathematical functions on two variables. So plus is for addition, minus for subtraction, asterisk for multiplication, forward slash is for division, and modulus is to find the remainder of division. The next is urinary arithmetic operators. There are 4 types of operators used in the programming. The first one stores the value in a val and then increments the value. For example, if you have 5 inside a and you write val equals to a plus plus, then the value that will be stored in val is 5, but the value of a will be incremented to 6 after storing the value in val. The second one stores the value of a in val and then decrements the value. For example, if you have 5 inside a and you write val equals to a minus minus, then the value that will be stored in val is 5, but the value of a will be decremented to 4 after storing the value in val. The third one stores the value of a in val after incrementing the value. For example, if you have 5 inside a and you write val equals to plus plus a, then the value that will be stored in val is 6. The fourth one stores the value of a in val after decrementing the value. For example, if you have 5 inside a and you write val equals to minus minus a, then the value that will be stored in val is 4. So just remember one thing, that the addition operator can also be used on strings, that is to add two strings. Rest of the arithmetic operators can only be used on numbers in Java. From numbers I mean int, float, short, double, byte. So these types of data types. Okay, so the next type of operators are relational operators. So there are basically 6 types of relational operators: double equals to, not equals to, greater than, less than, greater than or equals to, and less than or equals to. Our next operator is conditional or ternary operator. This is used when we want to store a value in a variable based on a condition. So in the syntax, expression 1 is the condition, expression 2 is the value which is set into the variable if the condition is true, and expression 3 is the value which is set into the variable if the condition is false. Yeah, so we will discuss this in detail in the program through example also. Okay, so next topic is conditional statements. So basically there are two types of conditional statements, if statement and switch statement. So just for a clear picture, I have divided if statement into 4 parts. Here we will be understanding 5 types of conditional statements. Those are if statement, nested if statement, if else statement, if statement, and switch case statement. So let's move to our first statement, that is if statement. In if statement, we write condition in if block and we write a statement or a group of statements in curly braces that you want to execute only when the condition is satisfied. Next is nested if statement. It is a conditional statement inside a conditional statement. So it will check if the first condition is true. If that condition is true, then it will check if the second condition is true. And if it finds the second condition also true, then it will execute our statements. So basically, if it will find that our condition 1 is not true, then it will not check the second condition. Next is if else statement. In these statements, if the condition is satisfied, then it will execute our statements inside the if block. Otherwise, it will execute the statements inside the else block. Okay, so here I used the term block. So in Java or any other language that uses the similar pattern, block is anything that is written between opening and closing braces. Whenever I use a opening brace and curly brace, so everything inside those braces, I will name that as a block. Next is if else if statement. It is similar to if else statement but different in a way that if first condition is not satisfied, then it will check the second condition, and if that is satisfied, then it will execute the statements in the second block. So basically we use a chain of if else if statements and write any number of else if statements if we have multiple conditions to check and we want to execute conditions based on any condition is set to true. It is always a wiser choice to use an else block whose statements can be executed if none of the condition is satisfied. Okay, so if you are a beginner to programming, so you might have a question in your mind that why we are using else if and why can't we use multiple if statements. Okay, so let me tell you a problem that occurs with multiple if statements. Suppose you wrote 10 conditions and you want to execute your statement inside a condition that is satisfied. If your multiple conditions can be found true during the execution of a program, then you have done a good job. But another scenario, if only one condition is required to be true, then what happens is that if your second condition is satisfied, then it will check all the remaining 8 conditions also. So it will increase the execution time of your program and hence increasing the time complexity of your program. So it is not a wise choice to use multiple if statements when you only need one of the conditions to be satisfied. In such scenarios, always use the if else if statement. Next conditional statement is switch statement. Switch statement is much similar to if else if statements. So what happens in switch case is that suppose you have a variable in which you have stored some value. You just need to pass the variable into the switch statement and define the cases that which case needs to be executed based on the value. Suppose your variable contains the first value, then it will execute all the statements in the first case and will skip all the remaining cases. The internal execution of switch is comparatively faster than if else if statements. For example, if you will store second value in the variable, then it will not check the first value but directly jump to second value and execute the statements in the second case. So here default is just like else block of the if else if statements. If none of the case is executed, then the default case will be executed. Means the statements in the default case will be executed. Okay, so those who are not aware that why I have used here break, so let me just help you with that. Break statement is used to terminate the switch block. So what will happen? So if we will not use break and our first case is executed and we have not applied the break, then our second case will also be executed. So we do not want to execute the second case, therefore we apply the break. As a result, as soon as all the statements of the first case are executed, it will come out of the switch case. Okay, so this was all for the data types, operators and conditions. And yet surely we will see the examples of all of these in the project we will work upon. So here is the first program. In this program, we have to generate the report card of one student. First step is that we will define the 3 subjects, English, Maths and Science. Next step we will do is take an input of student name from the user. Then take marks of each subject, that is English, Maths and Science, as an input from user. And finally, we will print the report card of the student. Okay, so you need not to worry to print the report card in the exact same way that is using this table, and so this is just to help you understand better. So you just need to print it in console, yeah, but that should look like in a tabular form. Our report card will look something like this. The headings will be subject, marks and grade. Table with 3 rows for each subject, that is English, Hindi and Maths, and their marks and grades accordingly in the adjacent columns. The last row will contain the total marks and grade. So the grade should be calculated based on these conditions. If the marks are between 90 to 100, then A plus. If marks are between 80 to 89, then A and B plus, B, C plus, C and F respectively. So as they are mentioned in the table. And in the last, you need to print the result as pass or fail. So pass and fail should be based on that if the student failed in any subject, then he should be failed. So we are going to be very strict over here. We are not going to provide any grace marks to any students. Our criteria is simple, that if he receives less than 40 marks in any subject, then his result is fail. If you're not clear about the question, then you can just replay this question part in the video and understand the question again. Make sure before you move to the actual implementation part, you understand the question properly. Okay, so now as you're clear about the question, now let's implement the question into our code. So let me just move to IDE and write a program to print the report card of one student. If you are familiar with Java, then I would advise you to first pause this video and try to do this question by yourself. I will also be checking in the code we practice in each video to make it up, so you can view my code over there also for future reference. Okay, so in the future videos, I won't be using IntelliJ on Windows. So I just make a video on Windows because Windows needs extra configuration than Mac OS installation. The installation of Java, Git and IDE on Mac is comparatively really simple as on Windows. So you can just browse over the internet that how can you set up all those things on your system if you are not using Windows and using any other OS like Linux or Mac OS. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is I need to import my project which I created in my previous video on my Windows. So let me just import this project. So I will check out from version control, that is git. So I need to enter the URL of my project over here. So let me just check the URL of my project. Okay, so here is my project. So let me just clone or download and copy my URL from here. Yep. So I will paste my URL here and then I will clone this project. Okay, so my project has opened now. So as we can see earlier, we created a hello world program. So let me just try and run it. Yep, so the program's run, so everything seems to be fine on my machine. So let me just delete this file because we do not need it anymore. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a package for our all the classes. So what is a package? Package is nothing, it is just a group of folders which are used to organize our Java class files in a better way. So let me just create my first package. So new package. So I will name it as practice.report card. So here I have a package practice.report card. So I will create a new class file, that is report card. So it is just asking me that do I want to check in my file to get later or not. So I'm just going to add it to my list. So first I need to write public static void main. Okay, so you might be wondering that why I have used public static void main. So public static void main is the entry function for every Java program. So to start the execution of our Java project, so there should be a public static void main present somewhere in our classes, which will act as an entry point of our Java program. Now let's come to the problem. So our first problem statement. Our first problem statement is that we have to define 3 subjects, that is English, Maths and Science. So let me just take 3 variables. So the first one should be a string. So whenever we want to define any variable that should contains a group of letters, so not one character but a group of characters, so for that we always define the variable type as string. So string subject 1 equals to English, string subject 2 equals to Maths, string subject 3 equals to Science. So our first step is complete. So now let's move to our next step, that is take a student name input from user. To take the input from user, we need to use the scanner class of Java. So we are going to create an object of a scanner class. So the method of creating object is that first we have to give the name of the class, that is scanner, and then we have to choose a variable for the object, that is scanner. I am using scanner equals to then new object. So earlier I told you that we can create the objects using new keywords. So I am creating the object of scanner class using the new keyword. Whenever we are using any class, any other class in a class, so we need to use the imports in order to be able to use that class. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is take the student name as input from user. So to do that, first I need to show user a message that he need to enter the student name. So for that I will use system.println, and I will enter a message here that enter name of student, and now a string student name. So I am creating a variable for the student name, and I will take the input from the user like this, scanner dot next line. Yep. So this will prompt the user to take the input and will store the input in the student name variable. So our next step is take marks of each student input from user. So let's just do this step. So for that, first I will initialize a variable as int marks in English. So just remember, we cannot use next line over here. So this will give an error because next line returns a string type of value, while marks in English can only store integer types of value. So for that, we need to use another function of a scanner, that is next int. So next int will only take an integer value as input. So let me just copy this, and here I will take the input maths and here science. So one thing we left, that we also need to prompt the user that of which subject marks he needs to enter. So for that, we need to just write the print statements to provide a message to the user. Okay, so now our input part is done. So now let's check what is our next step. So next thing we need to do is print a report card of a student, and the report card of a student should be printed like this based on this criteria. Okay, so the first thing I will do is I will just try to print the headers, that is subject, marks and grade. So let me just try with that. So I'm going to use a tab space over here, that is 4 spaces. So let's just try and run this program and see if it's working fine for what we have written till now. Okay, so enter the name of the student. So the name is Roy, and marks in English are 45, marks in maths are 88. So this guy is pretty good in maths, and marks in science are 77. So he's just average in science. Okay, so our header is printed successfully, subject, marks, grade. So now let's try to print the next thing, that is English, marks and grade. So for English, we will print the subject name, marks and grades. Okay, so the first thing I will do is I will print the name English, or I can do one thing, I can use subject one. So basically, if I'm using a variable, I do not need to use the inverted commas. So I can simply print subject one. Then since I need to concatenate two strings, so I will use plus and I will print the marks in English. So as you can see that I have, as I told you earlier, that we can use plus sign to concatenate two strings also. So marks in English are integer. I know you might have a question in mind, then why, that how can I add a string with a integer? So if we add any integer, float, boolean with a string, so that variable is automatically converted into the string. This type of conversion we called implicit typecasting. Okay, so I do not have the grades of the students. So to enter the grades, I need to calculate the grades. Let me just calculate the grade. So to calculate the grade, we have this criteria. So what is this double end? So double end, if you have read, there were logic gates in physics. So what are logic gates? Logic gates are used to combine two expressions based on and or conditions. That is, if marks in English are greater than equals to 90 and marks in English are less than equals to 90. So basically using and means that to execute the statements inside the if statements, both conditions are required to be satisfied. Okay, so I also need to have a string grades in English. So I'm just gonna keep it null for now. Grades in English equals to, so I'm just gonna copy it and paste it over here like this. So else if marks in English are greater than equals to, so our next condition was 80 to 89. So greater than equals to 80 and less than equals to 89, and our grade will be A. So the next thing is 70 to 79, and here our grade will be B plus. The next is our 69 to 70. Oh, sorry, that should be 60 to 69. And here our grade will be B. Similarly, marks in English greater than equals to 50 to 59, and grade will be C plus. Next is 40 to 49, and our grade will be C. Okay, so here we have calculated the grade and our final condition. So here we don't need to use this. So if marks are just less than equals to 39, so basically anything less than 40, that is anything less than equals to 39, will give him a grade F. Okay, so now I can append my grades over here, grades in English. So now let me just try printing this. Roy. He got 44 marks in English, 88 in maths, 99 in... Okay, so English 44 C. So in English his marks were 44 and his grade is C. So our grade is calculated, but it is not in a readable form. So let me just add some spaces in between. So I'm just gonna add 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces over here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces over here. So let me just run this again. Oops. Yeah, so this is in a much readable form, so I just need to shift the C a little bit. Okay, so how many spaces? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 3 spaces more are required. 1, 2, 3. We will check that in the next run. Okay, so we have calculated the grades in English, but we have to calculate the grades in 3 subjects. So are we going to use this again and again and write this code again and again? So I don't think that's a good choice to do. So let me do one thing. Let me just cut this thing and I will create a function that will calculate the grade. So what is a function? Function is used to perform a function. So basically we use function when we have something which we want to perform repeatedly. So we write that piece of code into the function, so we don't have to write that code again and again. So basically it will increase the reusability of code. So I will create a function here, public static. Okay, so one thing function need to define is its return type. So as you can see in static void main, we have used a return type as void. So void means that it is not going to return anything, but here we want something in return. We want the grade in return. So the type of grade is string. So we want the string type as return. And now we will name the function as calculate grade. Okay, so one thing we also need to do is we need to pass the parameter, that is for what marks we want to calculate the grade. So that thing that we are going to provide to function, so we need to pass it as a parameter in the function. Our parameter will be int because our marks are in int. So int marks, and here we just need to replace these variables with marks and grades in English. So we need to define a variable over here, string grades. Yep. So I'm just gonna replace grades in English with this. Now whatever is our output, so whatever values is stored in grades, we are just going to return it. So to return something value, we will use the keyword return and the value name, that is grades. So there is a shortcut key in IDEA, that is Control Alt L. You can use that to format your code. So basically that will improve the indentation and spaces all. So your code will look much cleaner. Okay, so now here I want to use that function. So I will just use it as calculate grade and I will pass the marks, that is marks in English. Okay, so now let's check this again. So the name of the student is Troy again. His marks were 77 in English, so he improved a little bit, and 88 in maths and 55 in this. Okay, so now here we can see that we are successfully able to print the subject name, marks and grades. Okay, so now let's repeat the process for, that is the remaining 2 subjects, all the 3 subjects. So I'm just gonna copy this and paste it 2 times over here. So grades in English, so those were grades in maths, and here marks in maths. So grades in science, and here marks in science. So this part is done. So now let me also copy this print statement and print the information for these 2 subjects also. Here I will use subject 2 and here I will use subject 3. Marks in maths and grades in maths, marks in science and grades in science. Okay, so now let me check again. So here I will enter the student name as Roy, 66 in English, 99 in maths and 33 in science. Okay, so this guy got B in English, A plus in maths and F in science. So A plus and 99 looks not so good. So A plus and 99 I need to shift it a little. So let me just add 1, 2 spaces over here. Yep, so now we are successfully able to print the marks and grades for all 3 subjects. Now, so the next thing we need to do is calculate the total marks. So let me just take a variable in total marks. I will just put the sum of the marks of all 3 subjects into this total marks. So marks in English plus marks in maths plus marks in science. So let me just copy this print statement. Okay, so here I will just replace the subject 3 with total marks, and here I will replace it with total marks. Okay, so grades in total. To find the grades in total, I need to use another if else statement. I'm going to create a function for that also, that is public static string calculate total grades. So here in the argument, I will be going to pass the grades of all three subjects, that is string grade in English. Let me just copy and paste it. String grade in maths and string grade in science. Okay, so here I just need to use the if else statement. So I will use the condition. So just remember that in the comparison of strings, we never use equals to function, because equals to compares both memory reference and the value, but dot equals only compares the value. So basically if your f that is stored in grades in English and your f that I have input here, if both of these are not at the same position, so that will return false even though the values are same. Let's add two more conditions, or grades in maths dot equals f, or grades in science dot equals f. So in this case, it will return a grade F. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is find the grades if the student is not filled. So we can't give A or B to every student who is passed. So we need to have a criteria on which the student grades are given. For that, we will find the percentage of each student. So to calculate the percentage, I will calculate the percentage in the else state. So else, and I will take a variable as in percentage. Okay, so to calculate the percentage, I need to have the total marks of the student. So I will just pass here one more parameter, that is in total marks. Okay, so our percentage will be like total marks divided by 300 into 300. Okay, so this way we can calculate the percentage, and on the base of percentage we can calculate the grade. So I will just return calculate grade and here percentage. Okay, so now let me just try to print the total grades of a student. So here int grades in total equals to calculate total grade, and here I will pass first grades in English, then grades in maths, then grades in science, and then total marks. Why is it giving an error? Okay, so grades in total should be a string. So here I will just replace it by grades in total. Okay, so now let's try and run our program. So our student name is Roy. He received 44 marks in English, 77 in maths, and 99 in science. Okay, so his grade is still F. So that is a problem because he is not failed in any subject. So his grade should not have been F. So let me just tell you the problem. So what is the problem? So here we are calculating total marks divided by 300 and then multiplying it by 300 into 100. So let's just take an example. So suppose our total marks were 150. So we divided it by 300. That gave us 0.5, but an integer cannot store the decimal values in itself, so it will just store the base value, that is it will convert it to 0. So now our total marks divided by 300 is 0, and 0 into 100 is 0. So therefore our percentage is 0 and our grade is F. So I need to change the logic a little bit. I will just first multiply it by 100 and then divide it by 300. So what it will do, that suppose our marks are 150 into 100 will be 15,000, and 15,000 divided by 300 will give 50. So its percentage will be 50 and we will receive the correct grades now. So let me just run this again. So Roy 22, not 22, I will take it as 66 and 77 and 88. Yep, so now we are getting the correct grade. So I just need to shift these a little. So I think adding how many spaces I need to add? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Okay, so adding 8 more spaces will do the job. So here let's just check again. Yep, so now it looks a little bit better. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to find whether the student passed or failed based on his grades in total. So here I will use the ternary operator. So let me just take a string result and I will write it like that: if my grade is F, then he is fail, otherwise he is passed. So grades in total dot equals F, then pass, otherwise fail. Okay, so I wrote the logic a little bit wrong. So here should be fail and here should be pass. So now let's try and run this program. Okay, so the result is pass now. So let us just check once with the fail status also. So name of the student 33, 44 and 55. Yeah, so our program is complete now. Okay, so here we just missed one thing. So let me just add it up. So we are not printing the student name. So let me just add it here. Yep, so our report card is complete now. So we are successfully able to print the student name, these headers, his marks and grades in each subject, total marks, and the result. Okay, so now the final thing I need to do is to commit my code on GitHub. So I'm just gonna press Ctrl K. So on Windows it's Ctrl K and on Mac it's Command plus K. So after this pop-up opens, I just need to enter my commit message and then commit the code. So after my code is committed successfully, I just need to push it to GitHub so that it will be published on GitHub also. So to push the code on GitHub, press Command Shift K or Control Shift K and then push. So let me just open my browser and check if the code is committed properly or not. Okay, so here in the commits, I can see that my commit has been done properly and I can see all the updated code over here also. And if I go into the source, so here also I can see all my updated code. Okay, so now just to conclude, so today we got familiar with 3 topics of Java, that is data types, operators and conditional statements, and also we implemented some of these things in our first program. So in the next video, we will understand that what are loops. Thanks for watching this video. If this video was helpful to you, please do hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel for the latest updates. Also please mention in the comments that what you liked in video and what thing was missing in this video.